Welcome to the Scott Emo Show, Henry Rollins, my friend. How you doing this afternoon?
I'm good, thanks.
Good, man. So we were talking, how do you, Henry Rollins, define originality?
I define it by thinking for myself, and not an easy thing to do when you really try and do it. It's like when someone says, keep an open mind, try it.
Right.
I mean, it's a bitch to do so. And many years ago, one of the most intelligent people I've ever encountered in my life was the guitar player in the band I was in, Chris Haskett. And Chris is this kind of crazy intelligent person from a family of scary intelligent people. They're all professors, multilingual. And Chris and I would have these arguments, well, discussions, as one does in a van 18 hours a day. And he would treat me gently as he would take any of my meager intellectual assertions and gently dismantle them and show me that I was full of it. And when I was, heaving on some stupid point of view, and I said, well, why do you think that? He said, I try and keep an open mind. And that resonated with me. I said, well, let me try that. And I realized how freaking hard that is to do.
It's a practice, right?
To see something from someone else's point of view, to give someone else's point of view any credibility whatsoever. Like last night, I was on a TV show with Russell Brand, sitting with a man named Reuben Israel, who is a noted homophobe. And he uses the Bible, sadly, to put his point across as, here's why gays are going to burn in hell, and he waves the Bible around, which is a drag for a lot of Christians who love the Bible and go, really? Don't take that book and do that with it. I mean, it's not cool, but that's what he's doing. That's his First Amendment right. I have to sit there with this guy. I don't have any hatred for him. But I was interested in hearing what he had to say, because I try and keep an open mind. And I concluded that, and I told him on this show, I said, Reuben, you're an idiot. That was my conclusion. But I heard him out, and I think I'm right. Anyway.
Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but I think the fact that you can at least actively listen to other people and not just be stuck in one way and and that's the only set way, I think that's a cool insight to learn, right?
It's difficult to do so.
Yeah,
like when
hard.
I think that abortion is a really bad idea, in that I think it's poor planning that got you pregnant when you didn't want to be, and I wish things could be different. And I don't think that any woman goes, oh, hooray, hooray, I'm getting an abortion today. I don't think they won the lottery. But I also think that they need complete access to that procedure without judgment, without fear and trepidation. As loathsome as that procedure would be, I mean, it must be heartbreaking for the woman. But she can't die trying to have one, and she can't have to drive 300 miles across a state line to try to have one.
Right.
Right? So when someone gives me the anti-abortion speech, they're not going to change my mind. So I don't know how open-minded that makes me. Like, I heard you, and I still think women need reproductive health freedom.
Right.
Right. So there's no case you can make to me that would get me on your side to ban abortion. There's just nothing you're going to say.
You have strong values and strong opinions,
but
what they have to say. You're not going to.
That doesn't necessarily. Now, does that make me closed-minded? No, I've weighed everything very carefully, and I've made my conclusion. And I'm not trying to sound like a judge, but I am. And all people are afforded personal judgment. So, originality to me would be like a band like the Stooges, a guy like Iggy Pop. They just. When you hear the first Three Stooges records, you hear the textbook of rock and roll being defined as it's being thrown out.
They kind of just rolling with the flow.
They are doing their thing, thus reinventing rock and roll beat after beat, and in their own way defining it, so you can go break the rules yet again. And all of your interesting iconoclast people, from Thomas Jefferson to Johnny Rotten, boldly questioned and made a lot of waves and got a lot of hate mail and inspired a lot of people. And, by just thinking and going, well, I don't agree with that, and I'm going to very publicly and artistically and graphically disagree. And disagreement leads to a lot of good and a lot of bad. Disagreement, that's 9/11. That's the Taliban. That's Al-Qaeda. You see what happens when Al-Qaeda disagrees, that they fly planes into buildings. So I'd much rather they had petitioned my government for a redress of grievances. I'd much rather Al-Qaeda Inc. would have gotten together and penned a very angry letter to George W. Bush rather than fly airplanes into buildings and killing a bunch of people. But you see where anger and consternation leads one sometimes. And so I try and, anything I disagree with initially, when my gut says wrong, I want to be able to defend my point of view intellectually.
So you'll research, you'll dig deep, and you'll learn, you'll educate yourself.
I try. I do my best.
Right. So you're a very deep philosophical thinker. I mean, you definitely think along the lines of somebody that has a lot of individuality. Has there been an event in your life that triggered those thoughts, or have you always been this kind of deep thought thinker and kind of leader and activist?
Well, I think anyone in their adult life, once you're, changing your own clothes and, driving a car or whatever, you are a combination of nature and nurture, in that you're a combination of where you come from, what decade you were raised up in, the records you bought, your first date, you are a sum and total of all of your early humiliations and triumphs and all of that. It defines us to a certain degree. Where you go with all of that, well, that's what you're going to do at the top of the food chain, as Homo sapiens with a rational or irrational brain, right? There will be moments in your life that potentially are defining, and I've had a few of those corners, at least a few, and one was joining Black Flag in 1981. Certainly took me from my minimum wage job into the world of, international touring, broke, but we did it. And my life went
And did you love it? Was it worth all the sacrificing?
Of course, absolutely. It wasn't always fun, but it was definitely worth it. I wouldn't have traded a second for it. I think we could have, hindsight, but we could have done it more efficiently, and we could have done it a bit better.
Totally.
It could have been better to ourselves. But, what are you going to do? You do it, and you make the best of it. But that was a huge turning point in my life. Another turning point in my life was 10 years after that, in 1991, when a good friend of mine was shot and killed right next to me.
Wow.
And that was a very...
For what?
I'm sorry?
Was it a random shooting, or?
No, it was a robbery. A friend of mine, the guy shot at me and missed, but he ended up killing my friend. And the next morning, I had to, clean up. The guy was killed on my lawn, and so I had to clean up what remains of a person shot in the head. So there's a lot of, I had my hands full of this guy's brains.
Wow.
That you don't really walk off, and that leaves a mark. And so that definitely was one of those things that makes you have to really consider everything from life, death, money, government, law, justice, right, wrong, punishment, all the high shelf, big dollar items.
100%.
So that certainly were probably the two most changeful things that happened to me. The rest would just be kind of like pop culture fluff in comparison. But those two things were very impactful, and it led to a lot of thought and a lot of result in that. Those were both very politicizing things. that led to a lot of writing, a lot of speaking, a lot of activity on my part.
That's cool. So now that you're involved in a lot of social issues and you're public about your opinion, in your perspective, in your POV, what's the number one issue in our society?
Equality. Because
So
it's the one thing that the Constitution fairly guarantees, but it's the one thing that's profoundly lacking in this country. Would be, you have freedom. I mean, you have a whole lot of freedom. You know, freedom to be in the Klan, freedom to say God hates fags. You know, you can say that. First Amendment guarantees your right to scream that from the rooftops. But you don't have equality. And, you know, people will tell you, America's broke. America's far from broke. America is fairly lousy with money. I mean, we're crawling with dough. The problem is only 8 people have it. And so you have an economy, say an economy is an engine, and the money is the oil. There's not enough money in the circulation, so the engine's seizing up. And so people are saying, the engine's hot, I can't touch it, I can't drive it, I can't work it. And people are just being told, suck it up, sweetheart, don't be such a pussy. That's really not the answer to that problem, because the problem's very real. And the answer isn't get tougher and get 3 more jobs. That's not the answer. It's just that's working harder, not smarter. And there's a middle ground that the rich would stay rich and everyone else gets to have 3 meals a day and they don't have to see their finger bones come through their fingers from working that much. And so you don't have equality in this country. You don't have racial equality. You don't have gender equality. You don't have, and so will you ever have it? Well, we start to approximate and get closer to equality as we go, in that I'm older than you, I'm sure. When I was born, there's no way a guy like Barack Obama could have been president of the United States. And so, as you see, in less than 100 years, like since I've been alive, 52 years, my America has changed. I mean, there's no way you could have had a black president in the 60s when I was a kid. No way. Not a guy as brilliant as Obama. This wouldn't have happened. Now, America's ready for that. Miscegenation laws, what was that, Loving versus Virginia? I forget what year that was. But a black person couldn't marry a white person. Are you kidding? I mean, women couldn't vote in this country until the 19th Amendment in 1920. 1920. I mean, women have been voting in this country for less than 100 years. Well, what are we, barbarians? I mean, that's insane when you think about it. And this is the country that brought you the internet. And women have been voting for less than 100 years, which means we're still, in a lot of ways, dragging our knuckles on the ground. And a lot of parts of the world are looking at us going, when are you people going to stand up and join the human race? And so we have a lot of work to do, but that would be the one thing that bedevils America, is a profound lack of equality.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy that we can't just get together as a society and love each other for who we are.
No one's seen the buck in it yet. There has to be, in all of this, there has to be a profit incentive, because that's the way it is. And what would be the profit incentive of crime? Well, if you're building prisons, then a lack of crime is your enemy.
Right.
And so how do you make sure there's more criminals? Well, don't teach people anything in school. That way, full prisons, full battlefields, a country that says yes to war, yes to too many bad meals, and yes to homophobia.
Thanks, Henry.
Okay, man. See ya. Wave the Bible around, which is a drag for a lot of Christians who love the Bible and go, really? Don't take that book and do that with it. I mean, it's not cool, but that's what he's doing. That's his First Amendment right. I have to sit there with this guy. And I don't have any hatred for him. But I was interested in hearing what he had to say, because I try and keep an open mind. And I concluded that, and I told him on this show, I said, Ruben, you're
Welcome to the Scott Emo Show, Henry Rollins, my friend. How you doing this afternoon?
I'm good, thanks.
Good, man. So we were talking, how do you, Henry Rollins, define originality?
I define it by thinking for myself. And Chris and I would have these arguments, well, discussions, as one does in a van 18 hours a day. And he would treat me gently as he would take any of my meager intellectual assertions and gently dismantle them and show me that I was full of it. And when I was, heaving on some stupid point of view, and I said, well, why do you think that? He said, I try and keep an open mind. And that resonated with me. I said, well, let me try that. And I realized how freaking hard that is to do.
It's a practice, right?
To see something from someone else's point of view, to give someone else's point of view any credibility whatsoever. Like last night, I was on a TV show with Russell Brand, sitting with a man named Ruben Israel, who is a noted homophobe. And he uses the Bible, sadly, to put his point across as, here's why gays are going to burn in hell. And not an easy thing to do when you really try and do it. It's like when someone says, keep an open mind, try it.
Right.
I mean, it's a bitch to do so. And many years ago, one of the most intelligent people I've ever encountered in my life was the guitar player in the band I was in, Chris Haskett. And Chris is this kind of crazy intelligent person from a family of scary intelligent people. They're all professors, multilingual,